Habits for Success: How to Change Your Life One Step at a Time. Written by Daniel Walter, narrated by Russell Newton. Are you tired of living in a never-ending cycle of underachievement? Have you got a bunch of goals written in a notebook that you keep revisiting year after year and promising to accomplish? Or maybe you've simply given up on the life of your dreams because you believe certain lifestyles are only for specific types of people. If you answered yes to any of these questions, I can definitely relate. I spent 10 years working as an investment banker, and at my peak, I was earning $200,000 per year, plus thousands of dollars in bonus payments. From the outside looking in, everything seemed great. I had the nice house, the nice car, and I went on expensive vacations twice a year with my friends. But I was broke. No one had any idea that despite the fact that I was an investment banker, I was clueless about how to manage my own money. I was an impulsive spender. I went out to eat every evening, and I was out every weekend. Even though I paid them off every month, my credit cards were always maxed out and I had no savings. My life was unraveling at the seams, and I felt as if I had no control over it. Every month, I said the same thing. I'm going to stop spending so much money and start saving. It never happened. I had this burning desire to keep buying the things I liked, and that was how I lived for many years. I admired successful people like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, and I often wondered, if they had some special genes that made them successful, what did they have that I didn't? My curiosity led me to start investigating the lives of these people, and I was shocked to find that some of them had started out worse off than me. In fact, a lot of the most successful people in the world were raised in abject poverty. The more I read about them, the more I began to realize that success is about willpower, self-discipline, and good habits, all of which you can learn. And that's exactly what I did. I studied the habits of the most successful people, and I implemented those habits. Today, I'm a best-selling author. I travel around the world speaking, and I actually have some money in the bank. However, it wasn't as simple as it sounds. What you'll hear about shortly is how difficult it is to break bad habits because they're so ingrained in us that they've actually become a part of our biology. But the good news is, if you're willing to put the work in, you can adopt the same habits as these successful people you admire and build the same level of self-discipline as them to ensure your dreams become a reality. In this audiobook, you will learn why you've developed so many bad habits, how to replace bad habits with good habits, why motivation isn't enough to achieve your dreams, why self-discipline is the only skill you need to become successful, the importance of embracing failure, how a consistent morning routine will change your life. If you're tired of living below what you know you're capable of and are ready to start developing the habits that will catapult you to the next level, keep listening. Most of us were born and raised in well-meaning families who taught us to do the bare minimum. My parents encouraged me to get a good education and get into a career that offered attractive benefits and a decent retirement package. This is what their parents taught them, and so that was what they taught me. When they came home after a hard day's work, they spent the rest of the evening in front of the TV watching their favorite shows until bedtime. The last Friday of the month was our favorite day because we went to the local Chinese restaurant. I'm not complaining. I had a decent life, but it was one devoid of purpose. I inherited my father's writing gift. My dad had a dream of becoming a famous author like Stephen King, and he spoke all the time about the book he was writing. Every year was the same. On New Year's Eve, he would declare that he was going to finish writing his book by December. For the first month, instead of watching TV after work, he'd go into his room, play classical music, and type. We could hear the typewriter ricocheting through the house. By February, he was back in the living room watching TV, his excuse being that he had writer's block. Well, that writer's block would last until the end of the year, and then he would declare the same thing. My father never became an author. He went to his grave with a half-completed book. My grandparents discouraged my father from becoming an author. As far as they were concerned, it wouldn't bring in a stable income, and it would be impossible for him to raise a family with any pride. They believed success was only for the privileged and not for simple people like them. My dad chose to honor his parents' wishes and become an accountant, subsequently spending his entire life complaining about his job. When I expressed an interest in writing, my father did exactly what his parents had done to him and encouraged me not to follow my dreams. I, too, honored my father's wishes for many years until I realized that I had become him. As much as I loved him, I didn't want to die without reaching my full potential and blessing the world with the gift I knew I'd been born with. I am grateful that my father lived to see me achieve the dream that he didn't. When I first attempted to start writing, I was literally following in my dad's footsteps. I'd make a New Year's resolution, bury myself in it, then give up by February. I too started to believe that success was only for the privileged. That was only because I didn't understand that I had been programmed for mediocrity. But things changed for me once I learned why my bad habits were keeping me stuck and how I could break free from them. As you heard in the introduction, I had a plethora of issues, so it's literally a miracle that I am where I am today. The subconscious and the conscious mind. The brain is the most complicated and powerful organ in the body. It's made up of two parts, the conscious and the subconscious mind. You can compare the subconscious mind to the hard drive on a computer. It permanently stores every memory we have in life, and its capacity is unlimited. According to experts, by the age of 21, the subconscious mind has stored over 100 times the contents of the Encyclopedia Britannica. When an old person is hypnotized, they can clearly remember everything that took place in their life 50 years prior. The unconscious memory is perfect. The conscious memory isn't, which is why we're prone to forgetting things. The subconscious mind retrieves and stores information. Its job is to make sure you respond in the way you've been programmed. Everything you say and do should line up with what's been stored in the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is subjective. It doesn't analyze and evaluate the information it receives, but simply obeys the commands sent by the conscious mind. The conscious mind acts as a gardener, and the subconscious mind is the garden. The gardener plants seeds in the garden, and those seeds take root and start growing. So, if you're not sowing good seeds, don't expect to reap a good harvest. A homeostatic impulse built into the subconscious mind regulates your body temperature so that it's set at 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. It also keeps your heart beating and it keeps you breathing. Your automatic nervous system, as well as the many chemicals and cells in your body, work in perfect harmony, so you function the way you're supposed to. The homeostatic impulse also keeps you thinking and acting in a way that's consistent with the things you've said or done in the past. Your subconscious mind has stored your comfort zones, and it works hard to keep you there. That's why you find it so hard to maintain a new habit. Every year for about 5 years straight, I said the same things. I was going to write my book. I was going to stop spending so much money. I was going to lose weight. I'd start writing, stop spending, and sign up to the gym. I'd be consistent for a month, and then slip back into my old habits. Why? Because my subconscious mind kept pulling me back into my comfort zone. When you start something new and get that feeling of discomfort and fear, it's a sign that your subconscious mind has been activated. The bottom line is that if your life is led by your bad habits, making a conscious, determined effort to change them isn't going to help. You've got to challenge them at the level of the subconscious mind, or you'll keep falling back into old patterns. The good news is that no matter how long your bad habits have been controlling your life, you can reprogram your subconscious mind for success. You'll learn how to do this in Chapter 10. Why change is so difficult. Research suggests that approximately 70% of smokers would like to quit because they know it's killing them. Today, it's against the law for tobacco companies to sell their products without putting warnings on their packaging about the dangers of smoking. Some of the images used are very explicit, showing the damage smoke causes to the organs in the body. But despite the graphic images and the lung cancer statistics, people are still smoking. Alcohol and drug abusers have a powerful love affair with their addictions, even though it's killing them and tearing families, friends, and loved ones apart. Obesity is an epidemic in America, but people keep consuming an unhealthy diet, even though it could kill them. It's easy to become judgmental when you don't have an obvious addiction. You'll hear the comments when an overweight person supersizes their meal, or when a drug addict is seen begging for money in the streets. But why have I never heard any nasty comments about my spending habits? When I was at the till, ringing up thousands of dollars on my credit cards, I didn't hear anyone sniggering that I needed to stop spending so much money. When I sat in front of the TV for hours on end, when I was supposed to be working on my course, I didn't hear anyone sniggering that I needed to stop watching so much television. Why? Because overspending and indulging in mind-numbing activities are not considered addictions, but science proves that they are. I'll talk about that shortly. The inability to fulfill your highest potential isn't frowned upon because the majority of people don't. But the funny thing is that we all talk about it. My friends and I would always sit and discuss what we wanted to achieve, but none of us ever made the effort to chase after our dreams, or we'd start, and a few months later we had an excuse about why we had to stop. Why is it that humans find it so difficult to follow through? Well, let's take a look. Scientists have spent years studying what happens to the brain when habits form. They found a lot of interesting information about the process that takes place in the brain, and there are proven scientific explanations as to why it's so difficult to break bad habits once they've formed. We develop habits through repetition. You don't need to think about brushing your teeth in the morning because your parents taught you how to do that when you were a child. I doubt there are many people in the world who struggle to brush their teeth. When you were learning how to drive, you found it difficult, but the more you practiced, the easier it became, and now you can get in the car and drive without thinking about it. Behavioral psychologist Nora Volkow states that certain behaviors are easy once they become automatic because the brain doesn't think consciously about the activity, it just does it. Habits also develop when there's a corresponding positive feeling associated with the activity. For example, it feels good when you eat unhealthy foods, smoke, gamble, take drugs, drink alcohol, or check social media. According to neurobiologist Dr. Russell Poldrock, good and bad habits are built on the same type of mechanism. But there is one major difference, which is what makes pleasure-based habits so difficult to break. Pleasurable behaviors trigger the brain to release the feel-good hormone, dopamine. When you keep repeating the behavior and experiencing the pleasurable effects of dopamine, the habit is strengthened. I had a spending habit, and when I wasn't spending money, I experienced a craving to do so. That's because dopamine creates cravings. When the body feels good, it wants to continue feeling good. What I noticed was that I would get the craving to spend, yet once I'd made my purchase, I no longer felt good. So it was the thought of spending that made me feel good, not the actual act. Once the money had gone from my account, I was left with a sinking feeling of regret. The same happens when you're addicted to fast food. The body craves it. The thought of it is so exciting that you go out and buy it. Whilst you're eating it, you feel great because it tastes delicious, but once it's finished, you feel awful because unhealthy food isn't designed to make you feel good. Once you're addicted to something, your brain starts working against you when you try and overcome bad habits because it's become hardwired to crave the thing you are trying to resist. We are hardwired to take the path of least resistance. One of the most insightful books I've ever read is called The Path of Least Resistance by Robert Fritz. He provides some astounding truths as to why humans prefer taking the easy way out. Bad habits are comforting. We like the feeling of lying in a warm, cozy bed instead of getting up at the crack of dawn to work out. We like the feeling of being entertained when we're scrolling through social media. Fritz compares humans to rivers because we travel through life taking the path of least resistance. As you've probably experienced, there will come a time when you want to change the direction of your flow. You want to start working out, develop better relationships, change your eating habits, or become more productive. You get into a routine, and you do well for a while, but after a few weeks you return to your old habits, and you just can't seem to stay on track. Why? According to Fritz, it's the law of nature. Humans have been hardwired to take the path of least resistance. Fritz also believes that we all have an underlying structure to our lives, and this determines the path we take. In the same way a riverbed determines the path that the water flows through it, your life structures determine your path of least resistance. You may or may not be aware of your life structures, but they are there. Whether there's water flowing or not, the structure of the river remains the same. Why motivation is not enough. When I was a kid, my sisters and I woke up every Sunday morning to watch Karate Kid. We loved it. It was so inspiring, and we wanted to become karate champions. After the movie, we'd practice all the moves and make a pact that we'd do press-ups and sit-ups every morning so we'd be fit enough to compete in a tournament one day. By Wednesday, we all had an excuse as to why we couldn't wake up an hour earlier for our practice. We eventually grew out of wanting to become karate champions, but we didn't grow out of not following through on our commitments. We were children. We would laugh about our lack of dedication. We genuinely thought it was funny. It wasn't until years later that I learned why we couldn't keep ourselves motivated to become karate champions. It was because motivation doesn't last. When we're motivated, we're driven to take action. Basically, motivation is a feeling. It's the adrenaline rush you get when you hear a powerful speech or watch an inspiring movie, and as I'm sure you're aware, feelings change. Another reason motivation doesn't last is because when we face challenges, it weakens. Humans are led by their emotions, and while our forebrains are highly sophisticated, it's our limbic brain that dictates our actions. Everything we do is driven by our unconscious desires. The limbic brain is responsible for our physical survival and the overall regulation of our body. Its main function is to preserve our basic survival needs, such as reproduction, breathing, and movement. Additionally, it controls unconscious actions and doesn't like change. When we're trying to develop a habit, our efforts are hijacked by the reptilian brain because it's been programmed to act in one way. As I've mentioned, we do things on autopilot, and we are directed by our instincts. If you've been programmed to enjoy comfort rather than discipline, you're always going to go in that direction and give in to gratification instead of thinking logically about the urges you're having. According to motivational speaker Jim Rohn, motivation gets you started, but habit is the driving force behind getting you to your destination. To develop good habits, you need self-discipline. I'll discuss the importance of self-discipline in Chapter 2. How are you enjoying this audiobook? I would love if you went to Audible and just left a short review. Look forward to hearing your thoughts. You've reached the end of another episode of Voice Over Work, an audiobook sampler. Where do you listen? Connect with us at newtonmg.com and join us next week for another preview of a new audiobook. Thanks for joining us. Have a great week.